Week 16 is championship week for most of you in the fantasy football world. So which running backs can you count on and who do you want to avoid? We're going to tell you. Chris, who you got first as your must start running back?
Yeah, I'm starting with Jonathan Taylor, a guy who's probably carried you into the championship the last 2 weeks. And you may be looking at this matchup against Pittsburgh with some fear and trepidation, saying, oh man, this is a really good run defense if you look at them over the season. But in the last 3 games since they lost Bud Dupree, they've given up over 100 yards per game to running backs. And that was against Washington without Antonio Gibson, the Bills, and the Bengals. So not top tier run offenses by any stretch. Taylor's got over 20 touches in each of his last 2 games. He should have no problem against his defense. Don't be scared of it. He's gotten you here. He's going to take you home.
Yeah, it's bizarre. The collapse of the Pittsburgh Steelers is one of the most interesting stories here in 2020. I'm going to go with a guy that really wasn't on our radar, at least not till lately. David Johnson really hasn't done much for fantasy owners, but you know what? Last week, he did quite a bit. 11 catches, 106 yards. That'll do. If you're in a PPR league, definitely. So he's not doing a lot as a runner, but if he's going to get that kind of volume in the passing game, he's definitely somebody you want in your lineup. Just talked about this game, the Steelers-Bengals. I know the Bengals pulled off that upset, but that doesn't mean all of a sudden they're a dominant defense. That had to do with the Steelers and their troubles. So this is a team that you definitely can start running backs against. We've talked about that all season long. And I would continue with Johnson. He brings that kind of floor that you really want in championship week.
Yeah, 2020 has been all kinds of crazy, but watching David Johnson do his best Alvin Kamara impression was one of the craziest things I've seen. But he looks good going into week 16, no doubt. And then I'm going to go with another running back who's kind of been up and down all year, but looks like he's trending in the right direction when it matters most, and that's Myles Sanders. In the 2 games since Jalen Hurts took over at quarterback, he has 31 carries and 5 receptions. So he's getting that workhorse type level volume. He played 70% of the snaps last week and got 90% of the running back touches. So it looks like by design with Jalen Hurts under center, they want Myles Sanders to be the guy, and he is the guy. And now he gets a great matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, who really can't start anybody. Not only that, banged up in that defense. No reason to be worried about Myles Sanders. Lock him in as a top 10 running back this week.
And it just so happens Cowboys look like they're going to be without their best linebacker, Leighton Vander Esch. Also injuries at safety and on defensive line. The way things are going, they could be without half their defensive starters this week. So Sanders, absolutely. And that whole offense looks revived. It's amazing the difference with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. So my next must-start running back, another guy, again, I'm going to admit, all season long, haven't really been crazy about, but we have to pay attention to Melvin Gordon now. The last 5 games, he's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. The only thing is that, number one, the Broncos offense in general is very up and down with Drew Lock. We don't know what to expect, but the matchup isn't bad, right? The Chargers defense, not exactly stopping too many people these days. Yeah, there's a revenge game narrative here. That's not what I'm going for. Going for the fact that Gordon has looked really good, but also the only issue with him is that he hasn't always gotten a full workload because Phillip Lindsay's still in the mix. Well, as of midweek, Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman are not practicing. It is possible Gordon is the only running back that's going to get touches this weekend. If so, again, great matchup. He's been looking great. I feel like he's a guy who could smash this week.
Yeah, Gordon has been running really well lately. I feel like it's been under the radar. No one's really talking about it. And like you said, if Lindsay and Freeman are out, he should get all the touches. Great spot for him in a revenge game. And then finally, I'm going with Dolphins running back. My gut tells me it's going to be Salvon Ahmed, but it may be Myles Gaskin, who's been on the COVID list. Last week, Ahmed had 23 carries and 3 targets. You'll take that every day, every week. No doubt about it. And if Gaskin is the guy we've seen in the past when he's out there, he gets a workhorse type role. So whoever it is going to be a workhorse. And they get a great matchup this week against the Las Vegas Raiders, who are allowing the 8th most yards per game and 23 touchdowns to running backs, which is second only to Detroit. So hopefully we'll get some clarity as the week goes on. But whoever starts for the Dolphins is a great start. And in fact, both of them might have value this week going against this Raiders defense.
Absolutely. As I think I can vouch for Dolphins and say it's nice to actually have running backs you can count on. We got two good choices now. My last must start, I'm going to double down based on last week. I had a hunch Jeff Wilson would be a good play. Mostert was a little bit more involved than expected, but of course, Raheem Mostert not fully healthy, and it cost him. He exited the game early. Jeff Wilson wound up getting a touchdown with his 60 yards. But this week, Mostert is out, not going to play, probably not going to play next week either. And so Jeff Wilson could see a workhorse type role. Tevin Coleman is basically non-existent. Jared McKinnon didn't even touch the ball until the very end, the last 2 minutes of the game, caught a couple passes. It could be Wilson's backfield. And even though the Cardinals are just kind of a middle of the road run defense here, it's not a great matchup, but it's not a bad one either. And you know what? He's going to get the red zone touches. As long as the Niners can keep this game close, I feel pretty good about his chances to put up points.
Yeah, you called it last week. He looked great, and there's no reason why he shouldn't do it again this week. So keep rolling with him.
This video has helped you at all, or if we've given you any help throughout the season, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. It just takes 1 second. We had a goal before this year started to get to 1,000 subscribers before the season ended, and we are almost there. Help us out. We really appreciate it. So here's some guys you don't want to roll with. It is championship week for a lot of you, so you're going to have to pick carefully. So let's tell you our must-sits at running back.
Yeah, my first must sit is James Conner. It seemed like he was close to playing last week. He was kind of a late scratch there on Monday night. Should be back this week, but it doesn't matter. Don't put him in your lineup. First of all, going against Indianapolis, one of the toughest run defenses in the NFL, so you don't really want any part of that anyways. And second of all, this offense looks horrible. This is not the explosive Steelers offense we are used to seeing. This is a dink and dunk, barely picking up yards, barely scoring touchdowns type of offense. He's completely 100% touchdown dependent in this game. And even then, he still might not put up much of a game as far as fantasy points go. So I don't care if Connor comes back or not. Keep him on your bench.
Couldn't agree more. We've talked about the Steelers. You know what? Even if he does play, there's a chance he splits carries with Benny Snell, who was at least decent. And yeah, I think you can't trust this offense at all until they show signs of revival. My first must say is a guy that is just disappointing week after week. Kareem Hunt. Don't know what happened. He was a major part of the game plan, even with Nick Chubb back. And now he's just becoming an afterthought. And so you might think against the Jets that this is a must-start week. It's a great spot for him. Not necessarily. Okay, so I think there's two things at play here. First of all, they're not needing Hunt as much to rely on because Baker Mayfield has actually looked like a good quarterback. It's hard to say, but the last few weeks, Mayfield is starting to look like the guy that was taken number one overall. He's starting to look like what they were hoping their franchise quarterback would look like. The passing game has been effective. They don't need to dump it off to Hunt anymore. And Chubb has been so effective, they don't need to give Hunt the ball as much anymore either. He's not unplayable, but in championship week, you need that upside. And 4 of the last 5 games, Hunt hasn't even been a top 30 running back in PPR leagues. That's just too low of a floor, and I think there's too much risk here. So just be careful about this trap game going against the Jets. It's just very risky.
Yeah, it basically took the game of the year and an offensive explosion, right? A couple of weeks ago against the Ravens for Hunt to really have any value. And I agree, it's just way too risky when it matters most. And then my final must sit is Mike Davis. Unfortunately, it does not look like we are going to see Christian McCaffrey back this year, which is too bad for everybody who drafted him number 1, like yours truly. And Mike Davis, he's been a guy that if you picked him up, he's kind of been carrying your team, right? He's been a great fill-in, not quite Christian McCaffrey levels, but he's had some games. But he's been very touchdown dependent. And in games where he doesn't score touchdowns, he really hasn't given you much. And now he's got to go up against that Washington front, which is one of the best in the entire NFL. And if that's not enough, last week he lost backfield touches to Rodney Smith and Curtis Samuel. So he's not even getting, the usage we saw him get earlier in the year when Christian McCaffrey first went down. So with him not getting as much work in a really tough matchup against one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, I know it's tough, but I think you got to sit Mike Davis this week.
I agree. I mean, he didn't have a big game last week going against bottom 5 run defense. This time, Washington gives up the 6th fewest fantasy points to running backs. That's not a good spot. And again, the upside just isn't going to be there. And my final must sit is a guy who's just been fading and fading actually, I do know the reasons, because the whole offense has been terrible. Wayne Gallman of the Giants, maybe not his own fault, right? He's still gotten, all the snaps in the backfield. He's the only running back there of value, but now that value is gone because, again, with Colt McCoy at quarterback, or even if it's, half injured Daniel Jones at quarterback, there's nobody afraid at all of this running game or this passing game. And so he went from scoring a touchdown every single week to now not scoring for 3 straight. And his yardage 57 2 weeks ago, 29 last week. And he's going against the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, there's really no incentive here to start Gallman. He's not scoring. He's not doing much on the ground. And the matchup is terrible. So I don't really care who starts at quarterback for the Giants. I kind of have to fade this entire offense, but especially Gallman.
Yeah, definitely. There was that run there where he was scoring a touchdown every week, but without those touchdowns, kind of like Mike Davis, just not giving you enough outside of that. Can't be trusted this week.
All right. So those are our must starts and sits at running back. Guys, if you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button. And we're going to be here each and every week, all the way through week 17 with start sit advice to help you win a championship. Thanks for watching.